Anna Karenina. It's a big book, and according to websites that track such things, the average reader should be able to complete it in 15 hours. I'm pointing this out because I've owned Anna Karenina for as long as I can remember, but I've never actually read it because, like you, I don't have the time to read an 864-page story written back in 1877. But then, I stumbled across another story. The story of a 5-year-old deputy sheriff in North Dakota who was awakened one morning in 1886 to discover that his boat had... The boat in question was worth about $30. Not an insignificant sum in 1886, but not enough for a normal deputy to drop everything and chase 3 armed bandits down the Little Missouri River. But this particular deputy was not entirely normal. He didn't care, for instance, that the temperature outside his log cabin was 10 degrees. He didn't care that pursuing the thieves would require him to build another boat from scratch. He didn't care that the Little Missouri River was jammed with breaking ice, or that navigating downstream would be a very, very dangerous undertaking. All he cared about was getting his boat back and punishing the men who took it. And so when he finished building a new boat in which to pursue the thieves, the young deputy packed a bag with some food, a camera, a journal, a book, and lots of extra ammunition for his trusty Winchester. Then he enlisted the help of 2 ranch hands to accompany him and went off to find the thieves who stole his boat. The next 3 days were difficult and best described by the deputy himself, who took the time to write about the many obstacles they encountered, beginning with the ice. It moved slowly, he wrote, its front forming a high crumbling wall and creaming over like an immense breaker on the seashore. Along with the shifting ice and treacherous currents, the men were in Sioux country, and the Sioux Indians in 1886 were not exactly thrilled with white people. Plus, the deputy never knew when they might stumble upon the thieves downriver, who would no doubt react poorly to the sudden presence of local law enforcement. Thus, the young deputy had to remain constantly vigilant. When he found the bandits, 6 days after his boat was stolen, tensions were high. Again, from the deputy's own journal. Finally, watchfulness was rewarded in the middle of the afternoon. As we came around a bend, we saw in front of us the stolen boat moored against the bank, while from among the bushes, some little way back, the smoke of a campfire curled up through the frosty air. What happens next could become the screenplay for a feature-length film. The deputy sneaks up on the thieves and quickly disarms them, at which point he has every right to shoot them on the spot or hang them from the nearest tree. Indeed, common sense and frontier justice demanded it. But the deputy doesn't do either. Instead, he takes the criminals to the nearest town for a proper trial. Unfortunately, the nearest town is Dickinson, a couple hundred miles downstream, and the temperatures are still below freezing, and the Little Missouri River is still clogged with ice, and the Indians are still a constant worry. The next 8 days were as irksome as any I ever spent, he wrote, for there is very little amusement in combining the functions of a sheriff with those of an Arctic explorer. Low on supplies and slowly freezing to death, the deputy might have reconsidered his plan and strung the thieves up like his men encouraged him to do. But no, the deputy doubles down on his strategy, believing he can make better time on foot. He instructs his men to continue downriver in the boats, while he escorts all 3 prisoners to Dickinson on foot and by himself. This is where the story gets interesting. because Dickens at least 40 hours away, straight through Dakota Badlands. And the temperatures are still below freezing. And the Indians are still a constant worry. And the deputy is now outnumbered by 3 criminals who would very much like to kill him. We plodded through the dreary landscape, he wrote, day after day, hunger, cold, and fatigue. With a sense of dogged, weary resolution, nights were especially difficult because I couldn't bound the prisoners. For doing so in those temperatures would have meant freezing off both hands and feet. And so, I simply stayed awake, reading, while keeping the prisoners covered at all times with the Winchester. Finally, after an exhausting 3-day march with no sleep and very little food, the deputy reached the main street of Dickinson, where he turned his captives over to the local sheriff. In his journal, we can still read his final entry. Under the laws of Dakota, I received my fees as a deputy sheriff for making 3 arrests and compensation for the 300 miles traveled, a total of some $50. It is impossible to read the deputy's own words and not be struck by his incredible determination and resolve. But I'm also struck by the photos he took along the way, and the journal he kept, and most of all, by the book he brought along to pass the time. Can you picture it? An exhausted deputy sitting by a campfire, night after night, his trusty Winchester trained on 3 unbound desperados as he plows through all 864 pages of Leo Tolstoy's magnum opus. Of course, if you're already familiar with the biography of this famous deputy, you know he never went anywhere without a book. Even when he was settling the frontier, winning the Spanish-American War, hunting big game in Africa, or mapping uncharted rivers in South America. But his ability to read 864 pages of Leo Tolstoy's magnum opus while marching 3 criminals across the Badlands of North Dakota, well, that is without precedent. And my favorite true story about the incomparable determination of our 26th president, the one and only Teddy Roosevelt, which is a long way of saying, maybe I do have time to read Anna Karenina after all. Anyway, that's the way I heard it. Called the Sweat Pledge, which everybody has to sign who applies for a work ethic scholarship. And a lot of it was inspired by Teddy Roosevelt. One of the tenets says, I promise to never whine. It's a sound that I hate more than any other sound. You know? This story is about, like, what's your excuse, man? Teddy Roosevelt just did not suffer excuses because he never made them. I said most everything I wanted to say in the story in terms of determination and persistence and just hard-headed righteousness and so forth and so on. But mostly, he's just a guy who read a book every day. He published 38 books in his life. He was the president, of course. Won the Nobel Peace Prize, of course. I think he's unparalleled in almost every way. And I've read most of the big books about Teddy Roosevelt, but I had never heard that story. And when I heard it, what I have to say for myself, is that your question? Yeah. I still haven't read the darn book. It's still on my shelf, Matt. Because, see, I'm terribly busy. Like Teddy Roosevelt, I got a lot going on. Yeah. What would Teddy have said?
A book to pass the time is the title, but I think better titled, it would have been the man crush of Mike Rowe, Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, see, you made it weird. I take care of the titles on the stories. You take care of the questions.
All right.
Actually, you know what the first title was for this? $50 the hard way.
Got it.
Because that's what he got paid. Now, of course, the beauty of Teddy is he'd have done it for nothing. He built a new boat in order to chase the men who stole his old boat. Okay, he does not...
My man crush, Teddy Roosevelt.
Whatever.
Admit to it.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, look, I admire him.
Can I give you a quote from him?
I can't stop you.
Take courage. Don't let your hands be weak, for your work shall be rewarded.
That sounds like it could have come from Ephesians.
No, it was Chronicles, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
There. See, I know your game.
I have nothing, by the way, planned for this episode.
Well, I'm shocked.
Because you are basically unpacking someone that means a lot to you. So, Mike Rowe, this is your life.
I couldn't write a story about Teddy Roosevelt because there are no new stories.
Got it.
This one was new to me, and it reminded me of a lot of stories I probably could have written. Do you know about his assassination attempt?
Please.
This would have been, I think, like 1912, maybe. He was giving a speech. He was running on the progressive ticket, the Bull Moose Party. A guy named Shrank came up out of nowhere in the crowd, shot him in the chest, point blank. The slug went through his steel eyeglass case and 50 pages of notes he prepared, he had not yet removed from his pocket, and lodged in his chest. He's shot point blank in the chest. The cops come running in. The crowd's ready to kill this guy. He says, go easy with him, take him, don't hurt him. And then he turns to the crowd and says it would take a good deal more than that to kill a bull moose. Delivers the speech. Talks for 86 minutes, this guy. 86 minutes. Then he allows himself to be examined. The bullet is lodged in the meat of his chest. It doesn't go into his cavity, and it stayed there for the rest of his life. Never had it removed. He shot the chest before his speech, tells the crowd to go easy on the assassin, and then delivers the speech. Now, I mean, that's a guy who builds a boat to chase a guy who steals his boat. He's a great adventurer, a great explorer. But I think the thing that I admired most about him was just a voracious curiosity. His love of reading. He was the first president. I think he was the first public figure who was a verifiable speed reader. He just burned through so much, and he was insatiable in that way. It just never stopped. He was never filled up with his search for righteousness and justice and curiosity and pain. You know, I don't know if I told you about a book I read not long ago. It's called The Comfort Crisis. I like it a lot, by a guy named Mike Easter. He just talks about the virtues of being uncomfortable. Well, Teddy Roosevelt literally wrote the book on that 100 years before. He was born sickly. They didn't even know if he was going to live. He was just so weak and enfeebled. He barely weighed 110 pounds when he got into Harvard. Doctors said, don't do this, don't do that. Here's a long list of things you shouldn't do if you want to make it to your 20th birthday. He did them all. He learned to box. He learned to fight. He just became obsessed with what he called the strenuous life. He swum the Potomac every day. He boxed every day. This is Teddy Roosevelt of the Rough Riders, the San Juan Hill. He just was fearless.
Our theme is kind of grit, determination, but there's a little irony twist, I think, that is fun. He read Anna Karenina, which features a woman running away from her illicit lover as he was chasing men running away from him.
Well, there you go. Very meta. Yeah. He's chasing, being chased. He's about being chased. A book I haven't read.
And I just don't have the time.
I don't have the time. I don't have the time.
I'm a busy guy.
A lot going on, Matt. It's very hectic being me. It's sitting there on my shelf. I can see it in my mind. I just, one of these days.